Welcome to Grow For It. It's a podcast for small business owners, managers, and professionals. The goal is to give me a chance to work with the space between your ears, on your mindset, to help you focus on the things that really matter to your success. I want to enable you to concentrate on pursuing your vision, setting meaningful goals, and engaging in the day-to-day activities that will have the biggest impact. Thanks for joining me. Friends, welcome back to the Grow For It podcast. I'm very fortunate today. I've actually got two guests in the studios. I've got Beth Combs and David Goheen from Gallagher Insurance Agency. And today we're going to spend a lot of time talking about something that really caught my eye and definitely caught my ear a little while ago. It's cyber liability insurance, cyber crime insurance. And as a business owner, I wasn't aware that it's gotten as pervasive as it has, but we were in a meeting a while back, and that's how I actually met Beth and David. And David gave sort of a brief overview of one of the product lines that's really become popular as of late, which is insurance to guard against the liability that you may have as a business owner should that happen. So let's go ahead and jump into that today. Beth, welcome to the studio. Thanks for coming in. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. David, this is going to be part of your wheelhouse. I guess you're kind of the go-to guy for this type of liability insurance.
That's right. Yes, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Hey, guys, tell the audience, if you would, a little bit about Gallagher, kind of the background of Gallagher, who they are, kind of what you all do.
Okay. Gallagher has been around since 1927. It started out as a family-owned business, and in fact, Pat Gallagher is still the CEO. We merged with Gallagher about 2 years ago. We are a full-service agency, heavy in commercial. And when we talk about commercial with Gallagher, we can talk about anything from the small business owner to a state-owned university to a port authority. There's just really not a limit.
You guys have scope and scale.
Wow. Gallagher is a national and international company. They bring a lot of knowledge. If you've got an account you're working on and it's something that you just need help, they will find you help. If you're looking for a piece of advertising, paper advertising, they have a team that does that for you. So moving from a smaller family-owned agency and merging with Gallagher, it really brought us so many tools to better help our clients.
Well, and that's what I found interesting. And the three of us met through a networking group that we have every month or so. Mm-hmm. And you all have talked about various lines and various things that Gallagher does. I just found it very, very interesting. And for my audience, a lot of small business owners, a lot of mid-sized businesses, entrepreneurs, this is one of those areas that, we spend a little bit of time on, but sometimes you kind of get lazy on the insurance. And, the renewal's coming back up. Maybe your business has changed a little bit. Maybe you're just getting started. So you just quickly sign the paper. What's the rate? Okay, I'm good. And you move on. And you don't really think about some of those gaps or how the policy you had last year may not be as effective this year because your world's changed a little bit. And so a lot of that's, why I like talking about these kind of topics. And David, again, you caught my eyes and ears when you started talking about this entire cyber liability line. So let's jump into that. Can you kind of tee it up from a 10,000-foot view and tell us kind of what that is?
Sure. Now, if you're a business and you have personal data from, say, employees, coworkers, customers, maybe third-party vendors, you have an exposure for cyber liability. There's cyber liability, there's also cyber crime. But as far as cyber liability goes, if this information is compromised, you're going to be held accountable from, responsibility-wise, legally. And, of course, hence the reason for the cyber liability policy. Defense costs are included. There are some other sublimit coverages that are included as well, such as forensics and credit monitoring, public relations, forensics expenses. But if you have that type of exposure, even for a really tiny small business, cyber liabilities, in my opinion, is a must-need.
Well, and I would think in this day and age, I spent the weekend catching up on all the stuff that's going on in Afghanistan. Obviously, there's just a lot of craziness going on right now in the world. And I think if things keep building up like this, I think, hacking, we hear about it all the time. This company got hacked and all this data was exposed. This is that type of policy, right?
That's correct. That is correct. You say hacking. Of course, ransomware is one of the more common, sadly popular claims that we see. Extortion. They get inside your network. They threaten to release all the information out in the dark web or pay us, X amount of dollars. So that's probably one of the more common cyber claims that we see nowadays. Others are social engineering. That's on the cyber crime side. Social engineering is it popped up, I want to say maybe 2-3 years ago. We've seen more and more of this. Someone is posing to be someone else. It could be your banker, a friend, and they're wiring money to their own bank account or someone else's bank account. Cybercrime is a little different than cyber liability. So cybercrime is basically direct loss of your own funds. So cyber liability, of course, is where you're held accountable because someone hacked in your network, and you're accountable for paying the claim for those who are affected.
Right, and I've seen that before because I get these notices that come in and say, hey, so-and-so's database was exposed somehow. We don't know if you've been included in that or not, but you could, so we're going to give you, credit monitoring for a year or so, and all these other things that hang. But for a small business, that could be devastating. I mean, because that's your brand, that's your reputation, that's, well, I'd like to do business with you, but I can't trust what you're going to do with my data.
That is correct. And credit monitoring, while we're talking about it, that's not required, but it's certainly a bonus if you have it, because that will help reduce some of the potential extra legal liability that came along with that claim. So credit monitoring is a nice piece to have if you have a cyber liability policy.
Well, and again, these are things that a small business really is not necessarily thinking of, but I'm amazed when I go back and think about the data that I have that's related to the clients I do business with. And of course, I try to be very, very careful with things, very, very sensitive to what's getting out there and what's not. But I may have access to their passwords and things like that because of the type of work I do for them. And if they were to come through me and access my client's information online, again, I was the last point of contact. So that may come back to me from a liability standpoint. Is that right?
Absolutely. You pretty much nailed it. And it also extends to retail stuff, businesses.
Yeah.
Credit cards, debit cards. A lot of business owners don't think they're going to be held accountable if there's a breach and a debit card number from their customer was accessed. You will be part of that lawsuit.
Yeah, well, Visa will just take care of that. No, it's a little bit hairier than that.
You will be involved. So that's a key point.
You have any stories of late where this type of policy is maybe should have either been in place or was in place, in fact?
I have one. There's a local hotel here in Louisville that did not feel they needed that coverage, and their systems were hacked. Credit card information was taken, and they had to pay those claims. They were held responsible for those claims. Now they have the coverage now, but their thought was, we don't need it.
Well, David, you made a point of, when we were prepping for this, you said it typically is going to happen to the person that says, it'll never happen to me, right?
That's correct. For many years, everyone's had their own package policy, general liability, property, of course, auto. But cyber is kind of a new policy, a new coverage that people, not some people have it granted now, but it's kind of the new kid on the block type of policy. And some people don't want the extra cost, the extra insurance cost, and they feel like it's never going to happen to me. Sometimes I see this. And maybe Beth has seen it too, where car accidents. I've never had a car accident before, maybe never a ticket. Well, eventually it's going to happen. Well, cyber is kind of like that right now. It's just a matter of time. Unfortunately, in the world we're in right now, so some people kind of are hesitant because haven't seen anything, haven't been hacked. As far as I know, I haven't been hacked. But that's kind of the mindset.
Thing. You may not know. That is the weird thing about this.
Some people have been hacked and don't know or did not know.
Right. And there's not a month that goes by that I don't get a message from a friend on Facebook, hey, I've been hacked. That's minimal. We're just talking about goofy stuff on Facebook. But if that pertains to your business, and not to mention all the information that Facebook has, and I think that's where a lot of business owners kind of go to sleep on this, is because we think, well, it's only going to be the big companies, and they've got all these resources, and they've got all this money that they can put toward remediation and all that. Well, that's just it. They do have all those safeguards and resources. Most of us don't. That's where this can be devastating, either to the brand reputation again, or just your ability to conduct business.
That's correct. And unfortunately, claims are on the rise. And one of the, this is fairly new actually, a lot of the carriers, especially if you have employees that are tapping in remotely, so a lot of people are working from home now, right? If you tap in remotely, there's going to be a multi-factor authentication requirement to verify that it's you. Just to get a policy. Before you could get around that as long as you had a firewall and antiviral software set up. Boom, off you go. Here's your policy. Now this is being implemented for those that have employees that are working remotely.
Well, I got to think after COVID. I mean that was a massive migration back to home offices, and some people are trying to go back, but there's still a lot of us out there. And in my business, I mean, if I've got a cell phone and a laptop, for the most part, if I get on the internet, I'm up and open for business. But again, you don't really think about, well, wait a minute, what exposure do I have here? And that's what I really think is interesting about this kind of a policy, that it might be that little safeguard should I ever need it, which, daggone, it's like, well, Beth, as you said about the hotel, they have it now, but that's after the fact.
Right.
That's after the fact. David, what else about this? I mean, we talked a little bit about the liability, but let's come back to this ransomware, because I know that comes up in on the news. You know, so and so company got hit. And there's not a lot talked about because they really don't want people to know how much they actually paid. But what is ransomware? How does it work? Kind of, you know, what's the overall idea of this concept of ransomware?
From what we see, typically it's from an employee who opened up, of course, an attachment or email that they shouldn't have. Or maybe it was a former employee who was let go and they've gone rogue and were upset and caused this to happen. And of course, ransom demand comes in, everything's shut down, blue screen, pay us this X amount of money, otherwise everything goes out to the
dark web.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know how to get to the dark web. I mean, they say the internet that most of us know is just a small portion of what's really out there. Which is amazing. But
ransomware being a very popular claim, you can control that if you educate your employees on what to watch for and as far as emails go. If you don't recognize, of course, the sender, don't open it. So this can be somewhat controlled, actually, if your employees are educated on what to look for as far as not getting hacked.
Which is great if you're a large company, you've got an active HR department, you've got training and all of that. But again, most of us don't have those resources. We don't have those processes. As a business owner, we may not even understand it completely anyway. How would we get that kind of training? And is that something that you guys can advise on, or do the carriers come in and do that? Or
we can advise a little bit. I mean, honestly, having a good, strong IT contact most likely will help. Build up your firewall and put some other procedures and implement some resources and tools for the organization as a whole. Honestly, but we can certainly advise on coverages needed and things to look out for sure.
You guys probably have contacts that we could tap into to say, hey, is there somebody reputable out there? I mean, the thing, about, you see all these people that have the shingles hanging out saying, hey, I do computer work and IT, and you don't really know how good they are. You trust that, oh, okay, well, so-and-so, mentioned your name, so I'm going to contact you. You don't know how robust their background is. And again, there's a lot of stuff that can just get messed up, and little trap doors that can be opened, unfortunately, because they didn't think about it. So you want somebody reputable, who's going to touch your systems. You want somebody who, if they're going to get access to that to protect you, you still want to make sure they know what they're doing.
Absolutely. Don't look at it where I might find some, a contractor or a firm, and they're a single person, or they're the cheapest cost. Go with someone who has a good reputation, who's been doing it for a while.
Who's responsive.
Exactly. If it costs a couple extra dollars for this, I would invest in it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. From your standpoint, I mean, you're the broker agent, so you're going to go out and ideally shop a few different providers, a few different carriers who provide this line of insurance. Is that fairly simple? What is the process?
Actually, it is fairly simple. Usually, it's a simple one-page application, just a few questions. Of course, firewall and antivirus software are a couple of them. Not that hard, actually, to get access or to get a quote. Of course, loss history is one thing they're going to look at. Have you had any claims? That's kind of obvious.
Right.
But in today's world, it's not too difficult to get, other than what I mentioned earlier about working off-site, and you're tapping in the network. The multi-factor authentication process or steps are starting to take place now in order to get a policy, if you're looking for a brand new policy. If you have a policy right now, great. Problem is, renewal increases are in the 15 to 20% increases annually right now.
Wow. What's driving that? Is that just the
claim activity?
The volume of claims?
Ransomware and the extortion claims are fairly large. A few years ago, they were only maybe $30,000 to $40,000 on average. Now we're looking at 6 digits easily as far as claims being paid. So yeah, it's been a volatile market, if you will, as far as claims and increase in premiums.
So if XYZ company out there, suddenly they come into the office, they try to boot up, and suddenly you get that blue screen, and somebody said, hey, we've got you, and you got to pay X number, you pay it in Bitcoin or whatever they're doing right now, right? Whatever, the term of the day is. at that point, my policy, I would contact you guys. And you guys your team would take over and would help me figure out how to restore if that's possible. But also, if I needed to say, look, just pay it, that's what my insurance policy is for.
Yeah.
Am I reading that right?
That's correct. And what's nice is our carriers that we represent have instant contact via phone number or an app. And as soon as you feel like you've been hacked, you can hit the app and you'll get a phone call within less than a minute, sometimes even less than 10 seconds, depending on the carrier. And they will help guide you through what steps to take next if there's a way to save information, keep data safe, given what's happened, and their forensics will get involved and help guide you through that process, because no one really knows, who do I call?
Yeah, that's where I would be at a loss.
I got to open my policy, find this toll-free number, who do I ask for? So we set you up as far as instant contact. That way you're talking to the experts, they guide you through the process and go from there.
Wow, that's we're going to talk. We're definitely going to talk. And Beth, as I bring you into this conversation as well, that's friends. When you have a small business, obviously there's a lot of different lines of insurance that you need to have. And I've gone through and I've looked at, for my office condo, I've got all of that. I've got all these other things that you've got to have in place as an owner operator in particular. But Beth, let's talk about what types of insurance. Maybe I'm starting up, and let's assume it's more or less a service company. It depends on the business, obviously, but just generally speaking, let's kind of talk about some things that business owners probably ought to think about and at least have a conversation about.
Okay, well, they're going to want to have the general liability.
And what does that cover?
General liability is anything that you are liable for. You have to be proven that you were liable. So you go into someone's house, maybe you're cleaning, and somehow or another you break a grand piano. That would be a liability coverage. Okay.
A lawn care guy could.
A lawn care guy could cut your service lines, things like that.
Right.
So definitely, those are liability. Your property, the building you're in, your contents. If you move into a building that has a build out, a lot of franchise owners do that. You have to insure that build out as personal property. Commercial auto. If you have automobiles that are licensed to that business, then they would need to be insured. But a real important coverage that I always make sure my clients have is non-owned and hired. So, Jim, let's say you have an assistant and you say, I'd like you to run to the bank for me and deposit this money. And on the way, she has an accident. Well, in the course of, the underwriter saying, well, where were you going? Well, I was taking a deposit for Jim to the bank. That company can deny that claim because you were doing something for a business. So by having non-owned and hired auto, you can extend the liability from your commercial policy to that person who's done some work for you.
Wow! So they're acting as an agent on my behalf.
Yes.
And so could you go do this? That's a normal course of business.
Yes.
But wow. Okay.
Yeah, and claims adjusters are really she would probably your assistant would probably call her insurance company to turn the claim in. They're getting very, very good about asking, where were you going? What were you doing? Especially when you've got all these people through COVID that are doing the delivery for food. That is excluded on a personal auto.
That's really interesting. As much work as I've done with attorneys, and we talk about personal injury and motor vehicles, I hadn't really even thought about that side of it.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I have a client, a very good client, and his son was doing DoorDash, had a wreck. We denied the claim. He was doing a delivery, and delivery is specifically excluded from a personal insurance policy. So if you're working for a company, you really that company needs to have hired non-owned to pay for that damage.
Unbelievable. I didn't think. And of course, you guys do workers' comp insurance as well.
We do workers' comp. We have several markets, and we do professional liability. And
this is what I want to talk about because I know a lot of professional services, errors and omissions and things like that. This comes into play.
Yes, and it could be from different things. It could be, you're a CPA. It could be that you are a marketing person and you're giving someone information on how to grow their business and it doesn't work like they think they should. You can also get professional liability for such things as being a nurse. I know David's working on one right now for a nurse practitioner. So there's a lot of things that are out there for professional liability.
That's amazing. I mean, this area, some people think, well, I've got a high risk tolerance. Generally speaking, I do as well. In business, you take educated risk, and sometimes they play out very well. Sometimes you're like, daggone, I wish I'd done something a little different. But when it comes to these levels of insurance, these lines of insurance, it's amazing to understand where the exposure is. And unless you're actively sitting down with someone from Gallagher, like Beth or David, you may not realize you've got some serious gaps in there.
Yes, you do. And a good agent will not just look at your policy and quote what you have. You're copying someone else's mistakes.
Right. This is not something you buy on price.
No, you sit down with your agent, and that agent should go through these line items with you and look at where all your exposures lie. And then based on that information, they will come up with the best pricing for your need.
Well, what I like about Gallagher is we get to know each other, and as we've kind of met each other in different settings, is that being a broker, you have the ability to go through multiple lines and either tailor fit something, tailor make, customize, if you will, the coverages, but you can also shop those coverages for the most, again, assuming it's apples to apples, right?
Right.
And that's kind of your expertise.
Right. That's what a broker does very well. We have, on the commercial side, we have about 25 carriers.
Yeah, around there.
25 carriers
Wow.
that we can go through. And then on the personal side, we have about 8 or 9, and some of those carriers are just for one item. They only do one thing. Maybe it's large watercraft, or all they do is an umbrella policy.
Right.
So we have so many places to go to find coverage for you.
Well, something interesting is as we were kind of prepping for this morning, the overall conversation, especially on the cyber liability side of it. You mentioned there's a line out there called cyber for actually homeowners.
For homeowners.
What is that, and how does it work?
It's along the same way. So as the commercial works. So it's an endorsement that is now being added to homeowners, and it basically is where someone gets into your computer and gets your private information and demands, works it out to where they may represent themselves as your doctor or your banker, and you open it, they've got information, and they can demand a ransom. The one claim that I know, I've not had any, but a claim that I was told about in training for homeowner cyber was a man had a boat, and his secretary handled all of his payments for anything he bought. His computer was hacked. They got his banking information, and the hacker called his secretary and said, Mr. So-and-so is taking delivery of the boat today. I need his credit card information for the down payment.
Seems legit.
And she thought, well, he does this all the time. There was no new boat.
Unbelievable.
So that's where cyber can come in on the homeowner side, because it can happen just as much to a homeowner as it can to a business.
Well, and David, one of the things that you had explained to me was that sometimes when these people hack into your system, they don't automatically do something. They might sit there for a period of time. Talk about that a little bit.
They could be in there for months, maybe even over a year, just looking around, getting access, and learning more about your business, what you do, who the people are, what they do, who your people talk to daily, whether it be involved in that business or maybe they're outside friends and what they do. If their friend's a banker, if their friend does this, they're learning everything about your business and the employees that exist in that business.
So when they finally decide to flip the switch and go after you, they can make it seem very, very legit because they've been just kind of hanging around in the back watching.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
So it'll feel legit, it'll seem legit, and Beth, as you had said, it may be, okay, yeah, that's normal, and you click a button, and it's game on.
That's exactly right.
Or game over.
Yeah.
That's right. And Beth's example is a great example of cyber crime on the homeowner side.
Yeah.
Right.
It can happen to anyone. Homeowners are not excluded. Business owners are not excluded. It can happen to anyone.
That's just amazing. I mean, when I look at all of the things that we've put up here on the board as we're talking about these different topics, friends, this is a serious issue. And whether you're a homeowner or whether you're a business owner or both, these are things that we really need to start thinking about now. Again, especially as you look at world events and as crazy as things are getting, I think we're going to see a lot more of this. I really think, bad players are going to start amping up. And if you're a small business with, you don't have to have a ton of assets, but you just may be an easy target. And this could not only take you off your game, but this could also, the time and effort you're going to take to unravel this. You know, we hear about identity theft. This is much bigger than that. And not to mention the downstream liability, the disruption you cause to your own clients. This could be devastating. And, you know, I don't mean to, you know, shake the alarm bell and say, hey, guys, we really need to get on this. But you might want to sit down with your carrier. And if you have questions or your carrier doesn't really seem to be up on this, let's get a hold of the guys at Gallagher here and let's kind of talk to them. Beth, if I want to reach out to you, and again, you handle, you know, all of these different lines. Not to mention, there's also, you know, regular homeowners type lines that Gallagher covers. How do they best get in touch with you?
Best way is to call me. I'm at area code 502-415-7053. David and I work as a team, which is a great way to work. If there's something that I need a little bit of help with, David's my person, and we have worked very well together about 11 years.
And you guys can come out to the business. You guys can sit down. We can have
Absolutely.
conversations.
Absolutely.
We can talk through it.
And we would prefer to come out.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
It'd be easier for me just to have you on site so you get a sense of kind of who I am, what I do, and what I might need.
Right.
Or where some of the exposure. David, the same for you. If someone wants to get in touch with you and to talk about especially these cyber lines of coverage, how do they best do that?
Yeah, call me direct 502-415-7039. I'd be happy to take some questions, assist, and if willing to meet and want to discuss how we can help you or I can help you with a cyber policy, I would love to help.
Well, that's fantastic. And you guys have a general website for the company, AJG. So that's alphajulietgolf.com, AJG.com.
Correct.
And so I can also get your contact information. I can learn about the various lines. I can learn about Gallagher in general, right?
Right, that is correct.
Yes.
Good deal. Guys, I really want to say thank you, first of all, for your knowledge on today's episode. I mean, I just... well, that's scary. That's really scary. But also, more importantly, I want to thank you for your time. I know you guys are busy. I know you have a lot going on. But you took time to come into the studio today and talk to us, you know, about these different issues. And you know, I rely on your guys' expertise on a lot of this kind of stuff because I don't know it, but you sure got my attention.
Thank you.
And I definitely appreciate your time. Friends, I want to thank you as well. I know you're busy out there, and there's a lot going on rather than just sitting here listening to the Grow For It podcast. But hopefully this probably caught your attention, and I hope this gave you a reason to stop and think about where you may have some exposure, and maybe you do need to make a couple of phone calls. And hopefully it's to our friends here at Gallagher, just to kind of talk to them about you know, what's keeping you up at night or what you might want to start thinking about. You know, it's been a little while since I published my last episode. I do a lot of podcasting. I do a lot of custom brand podcast production for my clients. And so I'm always thinking about, wow, I've got so much access to my clients' businesses. And maybe I, again, need to start looking at this type of exposure. But glad to have this episode up and going. And if this was information that you found helpful, if this is the type of information you'd like to hear more of, one thing I would ask you to do is subscribe. Subscribe to the Grow For It podcast. Now, if you're new to podcasting and you're not really sure what that means, I'm not asking you to spend money. When you find a podcast, if you hit the subscribe button, all that means is you're going to get a notification the next time a new episode is launched. That way you don't miss an episode and you kind of stay up to date on what's new and what's happening, and good information such as this that you've heard today. So when you're ready, let's grow for it.